What are all the wooden stakes for? I glanced up from the row of blossoming shoots sticking up from the soil. The pony at the gardening shop didn't exactly explain it all that well to me. Applejack walked down the rows of infant apple trees. They're to make sure that the trees grow straight and proper. The thing about grafting is that the scions aren't exactly prepared to stretch just right up from the rootstocks. So as long as you use the stakes good and early, you can make sure they don't keel over or something worse. I chuckled. A flock of birds sang musically overhead, flying low over spreading leaves of green that surrounded the sunlit clearing in which my new cabin resided. You must know apple trees like the back of your hoof. I only wish they knew themselves half as much. Life would be a lot easier if the trees would just plant themselves. Then where would all the fun be? That's what I try to tell my brother Big Mac, all the time. She walked with me around the green yard of freshly planted grass. One spring, he talked us into trying our hooves at growing pears. I still have nightmares about the next summer after. She muttered with a slight shiver. We've since agreed that I'm the entrepreneur of the family and not him. I'm guessing he'd make a better mascot? I said with a wink. Ugh. She rolled her eyes. Y'all can ask half the mayors in town, I reckon they'd be wholeheartedly agreeing with you. There aren't enough sticks in the world to fend them off at times, I swear to Celestia. Say, in speaking of summer, I glanced up at the front of my cabin. Could you give me some advice on adding a wooden outcropping to the front? What, you mean like a porch or something? Yeah, I said with a nod. This town is a lot prettier than where I moved from, and I wouldn't mind spending some afternoons sitting out here. I shrugged. And, well, you never know when it might decide to rain. Applejack looked up from the fireplace, her body huddled securely under the wooden blanket as she gave me a squinting glance. I'm mighty curious, though. Her voice was a gentle murmur, barely heard under the roar of the rainstorm pounding in on the cabin walls surrounding us. What's a musician like you doing out here on the edge of town? Most artists hang out in the center of Ponyville. Seems like an awful shame for some pony as kind as you to be dwelling someplace all lonesome-like. Believe me. I breathed easily, sharing the heat from the crackling flame with her. I'm not half as lonely as you may think I am. You get visitors, then? Oh, on occasion. I smiled. One friend in particular makes a habit of dropping by on a fairly regular basis. Oh, yeah? What's her name? I bet I know her. I took a deep breath, my face melted into something cold and melancholic. No, unfortunately you wouldn't. Well, it's good to know you're not entirely alone. After all, you've got yourself a cozy little cabin up here. She smiled as she gazed once more into the soft red hue of the fire. Must be awful peaceful. Yes, very. Mind if I ask what you do for a living? What I do for a living? I repeated, gazing up at some of the rows of musical instruments haloing us along the walls. I live to live happily, to compose musical accompaniments to the beauty that I see, to record that which is sad and lost, for the somber things in life are mere shadows to the warmth and joy that we're often too busy to recognize. I adjusted the stone-gray sleeves of my hoodie and smiled. But I'm never too busy. I'm just a pony who listens, Applejack, and more often than not, I like what I hear, because what's the point in hating the few cherishable treasures that we are given? It's taken a while for me to discover what I've been blessed with, but I'm grateful for that time. It's been like building a house. You learn more about the process as you erect the walls and the rooftop for the very first time. Once it's finished, it's hardly a project of your labor and your labor alone. Rather, it's the sum of all the love and support that you and your dear friends have contributed to it. In the end, a home is just an extension of yourself, something that couldn't exist without the foundation set forth by those you care about. I closed my eyes and exhaled peacefully. When I'm living here, all of my newfound friends are living with me, so this place is something permanent. Like a memory that never fades. Could any pony call that lonely? I wasn't exactly expecting a response to my heartfelt words, but I wasn't expecting utter silence either. As the seconds ticked away, the glow of the fire drew dim beyond my eyelids. I felt a cold wind billow through the cabin, though not a single window was open. When I opened my eyes, I saw a misty vapor wafting from my lips and an inescapable chatter from my teeth. I glanced aside. Applejack? She was rubbing a hoof over her forehead, reeling in a brief dizziness. As soon as she came to, her green eyes flew wide open. "What the hey?" Confusion swiftly blossomed into panic as she gazed fitfully at her bizarre surroundings, feeling the folds of the wooden blanket enshrouding her like a straitjacket. "Where in Celestia's name? Applejack!" "Duh!" She gasped and jumped up, nearly tripping over the blanket with Applebloom's doll. What happened? What am I doing here? Why is my mane all soaked?" She started to shiver like a frail soul that she had once carried out of a barn in some ancient place long forgotten. "Oh, shoot, I collapsed in the rain, didn't I?" "Please." I stood up and raised 2 hooves. "Just calm down." "I'm sorry to be a burden, ma'am. This is just so—" She bit her lip and ran a hoof through her wet bangs, quivering all over. I'd never seen Applejack look this weak or frightened before. I immediately wanted to give her a hug. No pony should ever have to feel the weight of the world crumbling atop her shoulders. No pony but me. If the cabin had fallen into dust all around us, I bet she would have been less scared. "How could I let myself faint in the middle of a rainstorm?" Her voice was breaking, as if she was on the verge of doing something I was hardly worthy of witnessing. "What's wrong with me? I'm not this... Applejack, listen to me." I marched up to her and planted my hooves on her shoulder, forcing her gaze to be swallowed in mine. "You are a strong mare, but it takes strength to trust other ponies. So please, trust me right now. Everything is all right. You got caught up in the rain, and I took you in." I smiled earnestly, replacing the warmth that she had lost when she stepped away from the fireplace. "My home is your home." Slowly, Applejack's shivers melted away, like mine always do, so many of those occasions being owed to her. She gulped and nodded, her lips curving slightly. "Reckon that has a nice sound to it." "It better," I said with a smile, ushering her back down to the fireplace where she could bask in the glow. "I'm a musician, after all." I draped the blanket over the confused mare's shoulders, calming her further as the rainstorm perished outside. "What about you? You sell oranges, right?" Applejack blinked at me. It came out first like a stutter, but soon she was guffawing like the proper pony that taught me how to swing an axe. Soon her breath slowed to an even pace. "So, I reckon you have a name? It's a shame to not know the pony who's given such good hospitality." "Lyra," I said with a gentle nod of my head. "Lyra Heartstrings." "Lyra." She repeated it, her eyes dancing across the musical instruments above us with a foolish wonder. "Now that's a mighty pretty name." So I've been told." We talked for 2.5 hours, during which Applejack did not lose her memory of me. I could not have been more thankful. Most of the things she told me were stories that I had heard before, from months of gently coaxing such information from the many freckle-faced, amnesiatic prototypes that I had been blessed with meeting before. Not once did I even consider interrupting her anecdotes, no matter how familiar they sounded. The sweetest melodies in life are the ones you're willing to listen to over and over again. No record player could do Applejack any justice. She is a live symphony I've been lucky to attend on several occasions, and every single time demands an encore. The rainstorm ended. Reluctantly, I helped her gather her things. While she fiddled with her hat, I personally bundled the basket with Applebloom's toy. I gave it to her, and we parted ways. A quiet part of me felt as if I had finally discovered my older sister, only for her to be going away on a long trip. I watched from the patio at the front of my cabin while Applejack trudged away in the mud. As I predicted, there came a point where she stopped in her tracks just before marching around the bend. I kept watching, for something was evidently weighing on Applejack's mind beyond plain forgetfulness. She dangled the basket on one hoof, moving it up and down, weighing it in notice of how much heavier it felt. Swiftly, she unbundled the blankets, keeping the contents dry. What followed next was a shocked expression that no painter could do justice. She reached into the basket, for nestled beside Applebloom's doll were 2 loaves of bread, a day's freshness still wafting from their crust. Applejack's lips pursed. Murmuring mute words of wonderment, she scanned the horizon and saw trees, mud, a misty rainbow, and even a peculiar log cabin, but she didn't see me. I had gone back inside, nestled under the blankets in front of the fireplace as I finished composing the last written bits of the Threnody of Night. Soon I would have the instrumental finished, and the last step before the magical performance would be acquiring more ingredients to act as a protective buffer. I remembered what had happened during my last experiment, and a frightening chill ran up my spine. I scooted closer to the flames, but then I felt the folds of my hoodie around my body, like a sisterly hug that never ended, warming me far more than any burning logs ever could. For another night, I fell asleep with a smile instead of tears. I didn't worry about the ashes of the fireplace spreading around the hearth. After all, I had a good foundation. I don't know how long it will take for me to find my way home, but so long as I am living, I will never run out of neighbors. Lyra Heartstrings, Stonemason's Apprentice.